I think if you have a burning desire to help, if you have a native curiosity about life, you can solve any problem. You can conquer anything. I mean, think of your favorite novel, your favorite movie, your favorite rock band, your favorite building, anything. It was made by somebody that didn't give up, somebody that wasn't stubborn, okay? Now we have the tools to help you achieve those things quicker, faster. But some of these people just refuse to take the way the world is at face value.
Working with AI, first of all, you have to have a certain curiosity to explore. One of the things with prompting an AI is it's going to give you the most typical answer unless you push it off that more probable. So part of working with AI is to kind of explore those areas that are a little bit less likely.
If a company does not encourage curiosity, AI will be 100% disruptive because you will find different types of talent able to do things that they previously didn't have access to or weren't exposed to. And that is an opportunity for innovation for that company.
Welcome to What If with Leslie Grandy. Every conversation I have on the show comes back to the same underlying question. What does it really take to be a creative leader when the tools, competitors, and customer expectations keep changing around you? I've interviewed investors, executives, academics, and entrepreneurs. They come from different domains, and they're at different stages of their careers. And they genuinely have different answers to most things. But there's one quality that keeps surfacing unprompted in almost every conversation. It's not intelligence, not experience, not certainty. It's curiosity. Curiosity is born of a refusal to take the world at face value. It's the willingness to stop and ask why something works the way it does and to learn from the answer. It's what makes someone walk toward the thing they don't understand rather than avoid it. It's how people navigate ambiguity. It shows up as a behavior and not a belief. You can see it. You can hear it. And the people in this episode are proof of that. That turns out to be a remarkably durable advantage. It's what lets someone thrive through multiple platform shifts in the same career. It's what enables a company to build a genuine learning culture rather than just a performance culture. It's what lets a person start over or start something entirely new at any age. And here's what makes curiosity urgent right now, not just useful. AI can retrieve information faster than any human, and it can synthesize across many sources faster than any human. But what it can't do is ensure that an obvious answer is the most meaningful one. It optimizes for the most probable response and for the speed to find an answer that works. A curious person is dissatisfied with the most probable answer and generally doesn't accept that the first answer is the best or most useful. That dissatisfaction is not a bug. It's the entire point. The 7 guests in this episode did not come to talk about curiosity. They came to talk about innovation, culture, disruption, invention, and the impact of AI on creativity in business, education, and investing. But curiosity was the thing underneath all of it. And today I want to pull that common thread. I hope you enjoy this episode. The easiest way to identify a quality in yourself is to first see it clearly in someone else. We recognize patterns in other people before we can name them in ourselves. And when you study enough high performers across enough contexts, the patterns that survive every variable, such as industry, background, timing, vision, and capital, are the ones worth paying attention to. Kelly Smith has studied those patterns.
Curious Office name, which goes now all the way back to 2007, was not at all by accident. That name came from an observation that I had amongst my friends in Seattle who were immensely successful. And I was thinking, what can I put one thing? What is the one thing that the common thread across all of those individuals that I can put my finger on that brought them so much success? I'm thinking about people like Rich Barton, the founder of Expedia and Zillow. Adrian Hanauer is one of my oldest friends, now the owner of the Seattle Sounders, and many others. And if I was forced to choose one thing, it was, obsessive levels of curiosity compared to most people. The second thing I think is also important, but I really prioritize the interest and curiosity. The second thing was a very healthy relationship with risk. But at the core, that's really just kind of it. I find myself just kind of walking around wondering, why is this way? And in general, I have a distrust and verify sort of approach to like the world around me because I'm convinced that the world around you and me is probably not even at all what we think it is. And now I'm getting into like the quantum part of what we think is the fabric of reality. So if you start there and you just kind of work backwards, it's pretty easy to start asking really simple questions when nobody expects that. It's my way of being. Just am deeply interested in first principles thinking and being fixated on what's true, right? Not what everybody's saying or not what people wished was true, but that's my personal interest in terms of the way I want to be in the world. Deeply curious, cognizant every day of my limited time on this planet, ferocious about learning, because at the end of the day, for me, that's what's fun. And I've come to a place now where I feel like, you know what? AI makes this even more fun for me because it's no longer an excuse to say, well, I don't know how to do that. Or the classic corporate one, you don't have the experience. And I think everybody has something to teach me, and I'm curious to find out what it is. You know, I personally found myself getting frustrated if I feel like that same level of listening or curiosity kind of wasn't reciprocated kind of on the other side. So as an investor, if you're investing in a company, but you sort of feel like they're really just not going to regard any of your opinions, right? That creates a really unhealthy tension, I would say. There's an ego thing to that, right? Which is like prioritize curiosity over personal ego 100% of the time. And I don't always do it, but I really, really try hard because I know it's the way that I want to be. I am 110% deeply interested in where all of this goes with AI. It's so disruptive, and I'm so curious about where's all this going to go.
Identifying a quality is one thing. Living inside it so completely that it stops feeling like a choice is something else entirely. Some people are curious because they decided to be. Others are curious the way they are left-handed. It's just how they experience the world. The richest version of curiosity looks like the second one. John Steinberg is the second one.
You know, at my heart, I'm very lucky. I was given the gift of travel when I was young. And I think traveling is one of the great ways to be open to the world, because especially years ago, you didn't have Google Maps. You didn't have information flowing everywhere. You didn't have translators. You showed up in a place and you kind of had to go with the flow. You kind of had to figure things out. And I take that mindset even today when I'm traveling. I don't always use the technology. And I certainly always think about what alley can I go down as opposed to the main shopping street. And so I was lucky that I was given that gift early because it helps me framework how to think about any decision. I'm open. If there's a defining piece of who I am as a person, I am the person that closes the bar or the restaurant. I will be the last person there. And I don't do it consciously. I'm just so interested in what is happening at the time and the people and the experience that I'm like, oh my gosh, is it really closing time? And so I am curious.
We tend to think of curiosity as a young person's advantage because it's accessible during the phase of life when learning is primary. But it's something that gets trained out of us by careers that reward certainty, institutions that reward compliance over experimentation, and decades that accumulate the weight of already knowing how things work. Jay Samit's research says otherwise. The people who thrive in their second act, their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even their 90s, are the ones who never stop treating the world as something worth figuring out. Age doesn't extinguish curiosity. It's when we don't feed it that curiosity fades.
I think if you have a burning desire to help, if you have a native curiosity about life, you can solve any problem. You can conquer anything. I mean, think of your favorite novel, your favorite movie, your favorite rock band, your favorite building, anything. It was made by somebody that didn't give up, somebody that wasn't stubborn. Okay. Now we have the tools to help you achieve those things quicker, faster. But some of these people just refuse to take the way the world is at face value. And in times of change, you want those people that don't go with the flow.
Individually, curiosity is a personal trait. Organizationally, it's a cultural decision. Permission's the issue. Companies either build systems that make room for questioning, for asking why, and for challenging the default, or they encourage ways of working that focus on iterative delivery of low-risk moves. That quietly squashes curiosity in favor of execution and predictability. Most companies believe they do the former, when in reality, they do the latter. Praptija works to close that gap every day.
Solving for the right thing. So how decisions are made, how uncertainty is handled, and how human and machines collaborate meaningfully. And for that, from the leadership, top leadership, to the individual contributor, everyone has to be a learner and a thinker. These are the two core capabilities that we need. And that's what's making an organization a learning and a thinking organization. So that's how I put it. Your employees, your people have to be in a curiosity mindset. Are they right now today? Most of the time it's not, because people are working on their day-to-day thing, kind of getting the answers. I think that's the conversation I'm having with most of the organization these days. Two types of companies that I've worked with. One is where, because they don't have space, they have never provided, they never got an opportunity to have that space of curiosity and that psychological safety to say, this is something that's not working, or AI is doing some part of my job very good. So those employees, they have some kind of hesitation, or they'll push back a little bit and say, no, it does these things well, but it is not able to do this specific thing well. They'll point out to something where AI is not good enough yet. What I kind of say to them is, it's not good enough yet, but it's still doing 80% of your work, right? So because the organization has not provided them that with that space, they are pushing back when it comes to AI or any other new technology there. Organizations that have provided their employees with that space of they can explore and they can kind of raise these questions. And that's where this is an example of actually asking good questions. I will give you an example. Basically, with one organization that I worked with, it was basically they had this mandate that each employee or let's say a team, they should start working with AI they were doing, and literally in a very specific point out. Let's say this part of research, or let's say market research, AI is doing really well. Let's say, and the areas of their work that AI is still not there, and where they really need to jump in. And what they were doing with that, and we were working together, is after that, update your job description or update the description of your team or the part of the organization. Is what do you do? So your identity is not connected to what part, how it was earlier. You're constantly about the mandate, and also think about where AI is progressing.
If organizations that suppress curiosity struggle to adapt, individuals who suppress it struggle to get the best out of AI. Working well with AI is not a technical skill, it's an interrogative skill. It requires you to be genuinely unsatisfied with a good enough answer, to keep pushing, keep reframing, keep asking a different version of the question until you get to something real. Catherine Elkins has studied exactly what this behavior produces when people bring it to their work with AI, and what it costs when they don't.
You work on creativity, which is so great, because intelligence is actually going to be downgraded. And I say that as someone who's built my career on intelligence, right? As a valuable asset, right? And that intelligence is perhaps going to be less and less, valuable. So what is valuable? Well, I would say working with AI, first of all, you have to have a certain curiosity to explore. One of the things with prompting in AI is it's going to give you the most typical answer unless you push it off that more probable. So part of working with AI is to kind of explore those areas that are a little bit less likely. It's there in the system, but if you don't push it in that direction, you're going to get the typical answer. Right. And that is thinking about audience, like being specific about who I am and what I want and what we're working on a project for, and giving it that context, but also pushing it a little bit sometimes when it gives you something that's not very creative, or that's kind of boring, or that everybody's already saying. Right. And so it's that kind of like, wait a minute, try harder. So that's the kind of discernment, but it also is a kind of critical engagement. Right. And maybe a little bit different from what we're talking about with critical thinking, where you're constantly saying, can you do better? Where is this going wrong?
You're listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you want to activate your imagination and build your creative muscles, I put together some free resources, including webinars, downloadable content, bonus book content, and even a GPT to help you achieve your goals. Access these free tools to start asking what if today at lesliegrandy.com/resources. If you want to know what institutional curiosity sounds like, just listen to Carla Gazzetti talk about curiosity as a cultural trait in her company. The conditions that make curiosity real are the ones that give people permission to try things that might not work, to rotate onto different projects, take on problems outside their area of expertise, and be wrong in front of their colleagues without it counting against them. That is harder to build than it sounds because it requires leadership to absorb the cost of experiments that fail and resist the pressure to optimize everything towards certainty.
I don't have an engineering degree and I'm a chief product officer for a networking company. Already speaks to the type of culture and leadership that we have at Extreme here, right? I think that the culture at Extreme has always been one of open-mindedness and thinking and belief in diversity and thought diversity. I think it demonstrates that it is foundational to what we do here at Extreme and how we think about things. And it is true if one is working in an organization where things are very rigid and it's harder to allow team members to change and switch from division to division, then AI will be very disruptive to their company culture. It has always been important to me, and that's part of why I've been at Extreme for as long as I've been, to be able to allow employees to experiment, to be able to shift. We regularly try to rotate our team members onto different programs, different projects. We are always encouraging our designers and our engineers and our product managers to take on different projects, different programs, and we have an always-on learning course at Extreme because we believe that open-mindedness and curiosity is one of our main tenets here at Extreme. If a company does not encourage curiosity, AI will be 100% disruptive because you will find different types of talent able to do things that they previously didn't have access to or weren't exposed to. And that is an opportunity for innovation for that company. I think making sure that your company culture has a mindset built for curiosity means that you are already ready for success in the age of AI. If that is not something that any company has encouraged their employees, then you're already behind the eight ball.
Stability has never been a reliable asset in media. The people who stayed relevant didn't do it by mastering the status quo. The digital age forced media executives like Scott Ehrlich to choose whether they'd act and shape the future or wait to react when others defined it. The leaders who decided to act have been genuinely interested in what was coming next, even when it threatened everything they'd already built. That takes a specific kind of courage, one that is powered by relentless curiosity. Scott Ehrlich has taken that path repeatedly. He uses curiosity as a personal compass to navigate potential disruptive opportunities.
My last job, I spent 2 weeks a month abroad and 2 weeks at home. And I'd often find myself in these weird cities by myself because the sales team went home because they had shorter flights. And I would go walking around and I would basically leave the hotel and whatever caught my eye, I would walk towards it until I figured out what it was. And then I'd find the next thing that caught my eye and I'd walk towards that until I figured out what it was. I did this in Amsterdam once for like 18 hours. And my career has been a lot like that. I see something that I think is interesting. It sparks my curiosity. It's mostly that curiosity. It's mostly the shiny thing outside the hotel. I'm going to walk to that until I understand it better. And then maybe I'll keep going, or maybe I'll sort of move on to the next thing. I think the opportunity is as much about what are the new things we can do that we couldn't do before.
Sean Atkins relies on curiosity to stay connected and relevant across generations. Technology tends to create distance between the people who embrace it and the people who just use it. The ones who close that gap don't do it by forcing themselves to learn new tools. They do it by staying genuinely interested in what the people around them care about. That interest keeps them current without much effort. Sean's point about converting curiosity into value is definitely worth a listen.
I'm mainly a curious person who is always kind of interested in what's next and what's going on. I also was very blessed that I got my first computer when I was like 9. So I think about technology kind of like a toaster, right? So it sort of keeps me generationally young because I'm interested in the same thing. The next generation is the next generation is the next generation. I think that the second piece of it is that because of this sort of global view and being sort of outside the industry that I participate in, like I wasn't born in the US, I didn't grow up in media, I didn't come from a Hollywood family. I kind of approach it sort of with this beginner's mindset. So I'm just curious where audiences are going. I found time and time again, if you sort of follow where the where your customer or potential customer is going, where are their interests? What are they doing? What's happening between generations? You're generally pretty on tap with what's happening. And particularly since I was blessed early in my career, I started at Disney, right? So focusing kind of kids and family. You learn very quickly if you're following what kids are doing, you're generally finding out what's going to happen next because they're usually the early adopters. They look at technology with a very different lens. And particularly in media, you can trace what's happening for the next, by following just the generation before. And then by the time that generation has kids, it's locked in a behavior change. And that's just been true time and time again. I think the third piece is that I have a high tolerance for ambiguity, and which means I have a pretty decent risk. So I've been willing 6-7 times in my career to leave the place that's sort of in the power position and go to the place where it's emerging. That takes a little bit of, I might argue, stupidity or a high threshold for pain to kind of go pursue those things because I optimize often for learning more than I optimize for the other variables people think about in their career.
And so this is a really fascinating line for a second. You're naturally curious, so it's probably intrinsically a skill you have. But what practices help you from becoming purely reactive to trends and being thoughtful about which trends are worth pursuing? So curiosity itself could take you down a lot of things that don't end up with value. So how do you know when something's going to be worth pursuing and exploring more deeply and when it's just something that's a flash in the pan moment kind of trend? What are those either traits within you or things that you look for that help convert that curiosity to value?
I think it's a couple things. One, I look for velocity of uptake of the kind of behavior or the product or whatever, both those things. The second thing I look at is the simplicity of the business model, right? Because like a lot of times you'll see massive uptake, but you're like, I don't see how that could be a business, right? So you sort of have to keep both truths in your head. And then the third piece I look at is like, how much is there a proxy to what that has come before that gives you some indication that there's something here, right? Because very rarely in innovation is the new thing that is absolutely new that somebody came up with that nobody's ever seen before.
Curiosity is the operating condition that makes creative leadership possible. It requires intention, time to explore, and comfort with ambiguity. And that has implications for how you build teams, not just how you hire. You can bring in curious people and then systematically remove the conditions that make curiosity viable, like overloading people with execution, penalizing questions that slow things down, rewarding the person who already has the answer over the person who found a better question. Curious people in that environment will either conform or leave, and neither outcome serves you. The leaders who get this right treat exploration as a legitimate use of time and not a distraction from work. They understand that the question asked before the project starts is worth more than the fix applied after it ships. They build teams where not knowing something is the beginning of a conversation and not a liability. In an era where AI handles more of the execution, that kind of culture is not a differentiator. It's a baseline requirement. The teams that will produce genuinely creative work, whether they're operators, marketers, product builders, lawyers, or finance managers, are the ones where curiosity was already the norm before AI arrived. I hope you enjoyed this episode of What If with Leslie Grandy. You've been listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you want to learn more about creative leadership in the age of generative AI, subscribe to my Substack at lesliegrandy.substack.com.